How are you all doing? I hope you're all doing well. We are now moving on to noses. I hope you've all been enjoying drawn eyes. I hope you've had plenty of practice and that you can see how different eye shapes and different lashes and different sparkles can start to change how your faces or your eyes look. So now we're going to have a look at noses, and pretty much most of mine are all the same really, but I thought I would go through some of them to start off with, and then I'm going to show you maybe about at least three different ways where you can draw noses, because then you can find your own style. And of course, once you've got these sort of basics with the nose, you can adapt them and figure out your own way, how you enjoy drawing them. So most of mine are all the same. They're just basically little buttons, and they're just and depending on whereabouts on the face. So for instance, this is a very small button nose, as is this, but the whole face shape changes when you bring it further down the face. So the further down, the older the face becomes. So she looks more like a 15, 16-year-old girl in comparison to this one, who looks more childlike. She's much smaller, and that's simply because her nose is further up her face. So when you get going and you start drawing them, have a little play of having your two eyes in the position where you want them and without colouring, and just practice drawing different noses at different levels up and down the face so that you can see how you get a different look. So just have a quick look through another few. So her nose is more than just a button, it's got a little hook going up there as well. So it's different to hers. Can you see that? It's a little bit bigger, hers is a little bit smaller. And when you start having a real look at the faces I draw, you can see they all kind of look the same, but they all look really different, and it's because just little tweaks, little differences to the size of the eye, the size of the nose, the shape of the nose. It just changes them slightly. So yeah, hers is a little button, and you'll see that most of my girls, they end up having a little white circle there, although this one doesn't have it as much. Hers sort of faded out a bit, but yeah, so hers is a little button. And I do as well, there's a little line here, so I'll show you how to do that, and that kind of creates a little feeling of the nose coming out. So, and same with her little button. So yeah, as you can see, they're pretty much little button noses. So I'm going to show you now the basic way to create that. So all I've done is I've got a sheet of extra smooth A4 card, and I have used my Pergamano ruler, and I've just gone along and just drawn a line all the way down each side. Do you see that? Just lots and lots of little lines. And this line is going to be an indicator of the centre of the face. So if you imagine here, if I bring in this first of all, if you see here where I've drawn two eyes, and then we've got the central line. Remember I showed you how you measure so that you get your central point, and then you're going to practice on this line just drawing different noses. So by having lots of lines, you can draw lots of noses. So there's a few ways where you can do it, and if you're not happy with your just drawing, again, you can bring in your button. Okay, and let me move this into the centre. So if you place your button and try and find your central point down that line, and then just draw round the sides of it, not going round the full circle, so that you're just getting lines like so, you can then straighten them off a little bit if it's a bit. And so the idea is to have pretty much two brackets. So can you see that? And then once you've got your brackets, you can rub out this line. And that leaves you like that. So experiment with different sizes of buttons, or instead of doing that, you can just do it to the eye and just draw little brackets and just practice at different sizes. So whatever size you have going along here, just try and mirror it. And it doesn't matter if it's not exact, because none of my girls' noses are really exact. You just get a little idea that it's a nose. Right, so you can also do, wait till let's get this line back in. So you can also just draw a little button if you like, so it's almost oblongy, and then you can rub it out. So I mean, that's not central, but just play around with it till you get it, till you feel like it, the line here is in the centre, and then rub out your line. Can you see that, hopefully? And then you can just overemphasize it once you're happy with where your bracket is. So just have a play around with creating little brackets, and then also have a little play around with different types of nostrils. So you can have them where they are sort of going central to the side, or you can have them being a little bit bigger and going up the nose a little bit, like so. Or you can have them as just little circles. It's up to you. This is where you get to have a play and find, this is where you find your style, by experimenting and trying different things. So I'm going to rub away these little circles that I made, and I'm going to now show you how we make these brackets look like a nose with your pencils. So I'm going to show you the basic coloured pencils that you can always use, and then I'm going to show you another way of doing a nose by just using different colours that you don't really think about using. So let me just get my pencils. So the first ones that I'm going to use are, let me just get them down on the paper for you. So we've got our light flesh, or the beige red, and I've got cinnamon, and you can also use the coral or the medium flesh. I've also got an ivory, and I've got a white as well, and black, of course, we always need a black, and I've got a sepia or a nugget, you can use any one of those, and I've also got a brown ochre. So I've managed to get pencil all over there now, but don't worry, just rub that away. So I'm going to take you back to when you did your orb, and I'm going to move this down a little bit so you can see. Right, at the minute I haven't got any nostrils, so I'm going to give me, I like to do these little ones here that kind of go to the side, like so. And I'm going to start with the lightest colour, the beige red, or your light flesh, and then with our little circular motions, just starting from the outside and working our way in, just start to fill this area. And so like with your orb, you'll probably remember, or hopefully you remember, that it was all about working to a point that was lighter and then having your areas that were darker. So I'm going to imagine this little point here. I'm just faintly going to do a little circle. I don't really want to see it because you don't want it to be like an obvious sort of circle, and I know that I'm going to colour all the way around here. And just fill that area with your first layer, nice and light, circular motions, like what we've been doing, and then get that area filled. So there we've got our first layer. And then of course you can go over that again with another layer, keeping it that it's at its darkest, going around the line and over the nostrils and down here and up the side. Yeah, and hopefully just by doing that, you're already starting to see it take shape, because you've emphasized the areas that you're going to have darker, and you're starting to see where it's building into being lighter. Well, not building in, but gradually getting lighter. So, and of course you can go on and do a few layers here doing just that. And then also you move on to your next shade, and I'm going to use the cinnamon. And exactly the same as what we've done before, and if you start at the outside, it gives you more control, and it helps you to see, just by putting in a little bit of dark there, you're starting to get the shape of the nose starting to emphasize. So by doing it slowly and gradually, it encourages you just to keep in at the side, keep right in at that line, and just see how it starts to take shape just by adding a little bit of a deeper colour around the side, and then do the same at the other side. So, and as you're doing it, you'll discover, well, you know, I don't have to take it right in. Sometimes I just leave it a little bit light. I do a little line here and leave it a little bit lighter in here, but not always. But I'll do it for now just to show you. And then just continue doing that, and then a little bit up round here. So straight away you're starting to see you can put a little bit in here just to start to emphasize that little white area. And I'm going back to my beige red because I like to blend them all together to make them look cohesive, and just go over the top of where I've been and just drag some of that out, and it just makes it blend and look a bit smoother. And just continue doing that. And same here, up here. And as well, sometimes what I do, not always, but I quite like doing this, just creating a little line here with your light flesh, and then continuing to do this, and then you can eventually just build that in as well, so that you're building in a little bit of depth around the nose. So when you're actually doing your skin tones and things, you'll start to see how this works. So I'm just going to put a little bit of light flesh around here, and I'm going to leave between this line and this light flesh a little bit of white. And if you want to, you can go in with your white pencil and just sort of emphasize that area, because I quite like it when that bit's lighter than the rest. I think it helps the nose to look a bit rounder, and same at the other side. And then still continuing with this light flesh just around that area, keeping it very faint, and you'll start to see when you're doing your skin how you can blend all of that in, and same at this side. So just a little bit over the top of that line, then you can make it darker and darker in here. And so of course you can bring in your light flesh up to meet this a little bit, not completely, just leave a little bit of white, but then you're bringing your nose up and around, and then that starts to help create that feeling of it being quite round. I'm just going to fill in a little bit more colour around that little white circle, a little highlighted area. And then of course, if you come in underneath your nostril as well, because if you remember when we did the orb, this area underneath has to be like a shadow. So with your light flesh, fill inside your nostril, because it's not white. If you look at a nostril, it's not white in there. So try and get your pencil colour to go in there as well. And eventually you'll use black to emphasise that, make it pop. So there we've got our first little layer of the shadow. Right, now I'm going to go back in again with my cinnamon and just get some more layers, and to get this area at the bottom to be at its darkest, and around the corner here, around this line, to be at its darkest, like when we did the orb. And then same here where I've made this little line, and you can go over this pencil line with your coloured pencil as well. And then it's just a little bit more of the same. I'm hoping that you're starting to get used to your pencils now, and you're starting to see what they can do, and how, if you're really light-handed, how you can layer them up so many times and create different effects. A wee bit up here. And then just a little bit around that white line. So there we've got another layer, and then I don't always fill all of this area. Sometimes it's quite nice to have a little bit of other little white bits, but there's no rule there. Just continue to have a play and find out what you think, because you'll get to where you think, oh, I quite like doing my noses this way. Now if you do this little motion, just sweeping up in the direction of the nose, that helps to create that circular sort of feel. So if you do that, and right around this nose, and then you start having it go in that direction, you'll start to see it feel a bit rounder. So we've now gone from doing the little circular motions to little sweepy. So you're going in the direction of this line. Always use that line there as your guide. So at this side you're going that way, and at this side you're going that way because you're using this line here as your guide. And then in the centre you're just going upwards, and then eventually you start to go in the direction of that line. And as you put down more and more colour, you can eventually get harder, but not yet. Don't get hard yet. Okay, now I'm going to use some nugget, and I'm going to start to emphasise the bottom where we've just been doing our little sweeps, doing the same, and then creating a little bit of a line along here. And then doing our little circular motions over the top and all the way around that nostril line. And you can come in underneath there as well and start to emphasise that little shadow under there. And go right into your nostril. And so you're going to be at your darkest down here at the bottom, around your nostril, in here at the bottom. So basically all of the bottom, and then you're going to find an area that's just a little bit darker than the rest. Can you see that starting starting to make it look round. Like so. So yeah, get this little bit here. Now, you can use lots of different colours to get these effects. These shadows and things, you know. I'll do that in the next nose. Show you how using different colours. Because you might want to create little quirky girls with different coloured noses even. That might be good. But not so much different coloured noses, but how you can use your pinks and your lilacs and your blues for your shadows and things. So we'll do that on the next nose. We'll do that on this nose down here. So it's just continuing there to get all that area there dark, and then we'll up around this corner. And with the cinnamon, darken up this little line here where we've started, just in the centre. And then it gets lighter and lighter. So I'm going to use now the light flesh again, just to bring what we've already done, blend it all in, and try to work it up more towards the little circle. So it doesn't look like an obvious, all of a sudden you stop sort of look. So I'm hoping that by seeing that you're going over the top now, that how you've also lightened it but also blended it together. And so you just continue with that really until you're happy with the nose that you've got. And of course, just still every now and again going back in over here and darkening that up a little bit. And again, that'll make more sense once we're doing the skin. I'm just going to emphasise this line. So from this lead line, start to come into where we've already been. Just emphasise where it kind of stops. And then again, that makes it feel round. Can you see that? So there, and you can just keep going and just making it darker and darker. So I'm going to bring in the black to emphasise the nostrils, and it's good if you've got a really sharp pencil. You can also use your micron. I'll do for this one actually. If you use a fine liner or your black pencil, whatever you're happier with, and then just emphasise that. Like so. And then with the black, or with a dark brown or a dark grey, I'm going to use a sepia, dark sepia, and then just continue to try and darken this up even more. Now that you've got that black line in, you can see where you want it dark, and of course inside as well, because you don't want that to look light. And if you just darken up, put a little line. You don't have to do the line the full way along, although you can, and see if you enjoy doing it that way. But I tend to just do a little one. And then just continuing around the outside, just to make the outside the darkest. And gradually dragging a little bit in. The same at this side. And then of course you can emphasise this shadow underneath. And so every time you do it, it'll look a little bit different. And every time you do it, you'll gain a little bit more confidence, and every time you do it, you'll be discovering your own style, finding what you enjoy doing, what feels natural to you. And this is just what feels natural to me. So doing that, and then I'm going to bring in the light flesh again and do the same again, just trying to darken this up a little bit. So you can see it's a gradual thing. It's just darker and darker and darker around the outside, and then pulling in your colour and blending it in so that it doesn't feel like all of a sudden you've just got a little white circle there. You're kind of working up towards that white circle, and you're going over the top of where you've been just to make it feel smoother. And of course, you don't need to do this little white bit that I'm doing. You can take it all the way in if you like. I'm going to fill it in a little bit more here, I think. A little bit darker here. And so of course you just keep going and going and going. And here's one. Here's one I did earlier, which has got a lot more, you can see it's got a lot more layers on it. So, you know, we've done a few layers here, but if you keep going, doing exactly, just repeating what we've already done, just with more and more layers, then eventually you get it so that it looks much rounder. And that's by darkening up this little bit as well, this sort of area here, having this little bit in there white. So you can see how different that is just by having smaller little nostrils. And I've coloured in around this bit that was white. I've gone in there, but I've just done a line here. So you can see how different it looks. So that's that style. And the other style is like this one here, where you just don't have all the area around it. Where you don't have all this sort of area around it, and it's more like a little button. So you've got this obvious sort of line coming around here. So it's again doing exactly the same as what you've done here, just without this bit at the top. And if you want now, I can show you how to do this, where it's like a real sort of bridge nose. So and just continuing to do what we've already done. I'm going to do like a little faint sort of line so it makes it feel like a button here, and fill all of this area with our first layer of light flesh or beige red. And then from this line, just going to bring it round and start to have a line come up. And the same at the other side. And again, you can play with this because you might want a thicker nose, or and just having your light flesh at the sides. And then what I like to do is I get my white pencil, and then just where the centre part is, just do a white line up there. And that is like you're working in towards that being your lightest point. So it's going to be darker here, light, 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 white. So just using your light flesh all the way into that little white line. And all the way around to get your nose all filled in. And you can have it just slightly coming in a little bit here. And just continue. Let's get our... Right, I'm going to use some different colours now. So we've got our light flesh. I'm going to use some pinks and lilac-y sort of shades and some purple this time. So I'm going to use this light red violet. And I'm going to have this as my sort of darker sort of tone, so coming all the way around the sides. And gradually working your way in. And then this line here being a little bit darker. And then along the bottom. So we're just mirroring what we did. This time I'm going to colour all of it, this side bit in. Just to show you that you've got choice. Don't get tied down to thinking, oh, I have to do it that way. Once you sort of sit down and you're relaxed and you're enjoying what you're doing, sometimes the pencil just wants to do its own thing, and just let it and see what happens. Just let yourself go with the flow. And don't be putting pressure on. Just, you know, just don't think, oh, that's a rubbish nose. Just think, well, that's my first nose. And I enjoyed that part about it. I didn't enjoy that part about it. I need to practice that a little bit more. Take it all as learning. And watch how you develop and grow. So now I'm going to go back to my light flesh and go over the top where we've already been on this darker one, and just blend it in and bring it in a little bit. So hopefully you can see now that that is the same equivalent as the brownie one, but you're just using a different shade. So don't think, oh, I just need to use browns or greys there. And just get to this little white point, try and emphasize it, and then get darker on the outside line here. So it's going to be dark, dark, light, light, white. You know, and you might think, oh, that's not fine off that bridge, and just bring up another line. Just have a play, and of course your light flesh goes over that line because that's going to be part of your skin. And you can have it as a shadow. And if you do just a little line here, then that makes it look a bit more like a bobbly bit here. You see that? And so like I've got a little white bit here, and then it feels right just to have a little white bit there as well. And then just darken this up a little bit more. A few more layers. And then go with it. So you try and have this darker bit feeling round. So you kind of know now that this area here, all this area in here is going to be dark. And you see this sort of line starting to develop. So I'm going back to my red violet, and I'm going to darken up around this line and drag the colour in from that line a little bit more. And try and get it to blend into this natural sort of curve that's starting to appear. And of course you can go over this purpley tone with your blacks or your greys and your browns if you want to. But I'm going to make her nose more pink rather than skin colour because I think that can look quite quirky. So I'm going to use this dark flesh and go over the top of where I've been to darken that up a bit more, and also bring some pink, more of a pinky tone into her nose. You see that? So once you start drawing little noses, a lot of people get daunted by them, but when you take away how you think you're supposed to do it in a technical way when you're doing portraits and things, you know, you don't want to get wrapped up in all the technical sort of side of things, because yeah, it's good to know all that stuff and to be able to do portraits and everything properly, but it's also nice to not have pressure on and to just sit and draw in a way that you just feel mindful and relaxed. You don't want to be putting pressure on, saying, oh well, I should be doing it that way or I should be doing it that way. Just do it whatever way you want to do it. And if it looks like a nose and resembles a bit of a nose, then that's fine. When you start looking around, art has changed so much. I mean, it's not like what it used to be when you had to be able to do, the only way that you were an artist was if you could paint a portrait. You know, there's lots of surreal artists and whimsical artists, and you know, and if you look at all the different types of noses that they're creating, they're not like real noses. So just have fun. So there, we've got another little layer on. And bring some of this pink up here. So you tend to have it a little bit darker in this little area here, because you've got this little bit making it look round. And the same here. And I'm going to bring in some black. So I'm going to bring some black up the side here. And drag some of that out to create a little bit of a shadow. And give the nostrils and then dark here underneath. Of course, you still need your shadow underneath here as well. So I'm going to use like a grey for that. First of all, I'll do the light flesh. I'm going to show you as well how you can create the little bit here. I don't know what it's called, but so if you just imagine that this is your shadow, like what you did with the orb, coming out slightly around, and the same at the other side. And then I'm going to show you how to do lips in the next one, so you'll be able to see how you can extend your nose to become joined onto your lips. But if you use your light flesh and then draw a little line down so, like so, and then just continue with your light flesh sort of around that area, and then over the top of that, then you can start to create. Now somebody told me what it was called at one of my workshops and I've forgotten what it's called, this little bit. There's several ways you can do it. You can use your white pencil and you can create some little white lines down here, or you can just leave them and just have light flesh there. Again, there's no pressure. So this little bit here is at its darkest. So if you just use that line as your sort of, this little line that you've just drawn as your guide, you start to see that darkening up. And then you have these little bits lighter. And then you have your lips joining on. So that's the sort of start of it. And I think it would be easier for me to show you when I'm actually doing the lips. So that's what we'll do in the next one. We're going to do this little bit here and the lips. Okay, so we'll just do the shadow under here for now. So I'm using a Payne's Grey, but have a play. You can use your browns or your greys. And fill in this little bit in under the nostrils. And just let that shadow come out a little bit. And you can have the shadow come up into your nose as well. And then that starts to make it look more like it's sticking out. Or protruding, maybe be a better word. So I'm hoping that this has given you an idea. If you can, for your homework, draw lots of lines like what we've done, and then practice either drawing around a button or creating your own sort of nose shapes, and then deciding on which one you like the best. You might like doing like the bridge nose. I mean, you can then extend that and make that into like a triangle if you want to make it more whimsical. Or you can just do lots and lots of different buttons, you know. Get different sizes of buttons and see, experiment with where you put the nose on the face, whether you're going to have it really low down or really high up, and you'll start to see how the age of your girl changes just by you doing that. So there. It still needs a lot more layers. I'm going to use this more pink. It's definitely got a pinkier tone of nose. Have a play, bring in your oranges as well if you want to, and see how different it looks as well when you put some yellow or cream in there. So like I'm going to bring in some cream and put some cream here, just every now and again in little different areas, and going over a bit, and then it starts to lighten it up a little bit. Can you see that? So have a play, and then of course please put them in the group, because I love to see what you're doing. Please don't be shy, and please don't think, oh, that's not good enough, because it is good enough. It's where you're at and it's part of your creative journey. And somebody said to me once, which really stuck with me, this: you can't compare your beginnings to someone else's ending. Now that is really powerful, because what we do is we go on, or we go to art galleries, or we look in magazines and we look at all these people who have been painting or drawing for years and years and years, creating these beautiful masterpieces. They're maybe good enough to be in galleries, or you might be looking at Vincent van Gogh or whoever it is and thinking, well, I'm not an artist because I can't draw like that, or I can't paint like that. But the thing is, you don't know where they started. You don't know what stumbling blocks they've had. You don't know how many years they've been practicing. You just can't compare. So you've got to be respectful of your own journey and where you're at, and just not care about what everybody else is doing, or how you I know it's very hard, but try and get rid of the expectations of yourself and just accept where you're at and accept that you're growing. And every time you look back at something you've done, you're going to see that you have developed and you have grown, and that you can draw. and that you can draw in your style, which is unique to anybody else's, which in itself is special. So that's my little bit of advice for the day. So all we're doing now is getting to this point where it's white, and so I'm going to darken up along the outside. I think what's that? That's a Prismacolor. I don't want it. I want this magenta. And you know, these aren't the designated colours, you know, play around, just think, well, Dee used magenta, but you know what, I'm going to practice using indigo blue to see what that's like. And just see, you'll only discover more just by being experimental. And you know, worst case scenario, nobody else sees it, it's just you that's being critical. But best case scenario, you feel proud of it and you put it in a group, or you just enjoy the fact that you've sat down and did a bit of drawing and you enjoyed what you were doing. You're not going to enjoy it if you beat yourself up. I'm just going to do a little line there and there, and then that starts to emphasise it coming round a little bit. And darken this up. So I'm going to start getting a little bit heavy-handed now around this area, and do the same here, and try and get this sort of sweepy motion going. I'm doing this, remember we did it another one, just coming in the direction of the nose in a sweep. So it's really starting to burnish now. And when you're doing it, sometimes it just naturally goes. You think, oh, I quite like that other little white bit there. See that one? That one's just started to appear. I didn't deliberately do it. And now that I'm looking, I think, I quite like that. So just be aware of where you're at and think, oh, well, I quite like that. And maybe if I do a bit up here, it'll look a bit rounder. And just keep stopping every now and again and having a little look, and go with your intuition. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the light flesh and drag some of this along and try and bring it in towards this white bit. Same at the other side, and then that starts to emphasise, and then that gives the illusion of the nose coming into a peak sort of it, so it's coming around. I mean, you can as well do your little motions that come like so when it's coming in, and then you feel like it's arching around. So to help even it out, it just needs to be a little bit darker in here. And here. There. And sometimes you do little lines, they look quite quirky and cool. So I'm hoping that I've shown you how you can get your sort of nose shapes, how you can use different colours, how you can create a sort of round effect just by using different strokes. And hopefully everything you've learned in your orb is all starting to make sense. And most of all, hopefully what I'm hoping you've learned is to not put pressure on yourself and to just have a go and lose your expectations of noses and what they're meant to look like, and play around with the eyes that you've done now, and then add in see the different expressions you get on your face by adding small noses, big noses, button noses, bridge noses, all the noses. So here's one that I did the other day. So that's showing you like the bridge nose and the little button nose, which is exactly the same as the first one but without this little bit here. And then this is just little tiny brackets. So instead of doing a big one, just little brackets, doing the same thing but making a really big sparkle in the middle of the nose. This one is quite a crooked nose with lots of little, that could be a witch's nose, couldn't it? So that one is just a case of doing the brackets but making it like that sort of shape. So you bracket and then a little hook like so. Sorry, I should have done, let me do that again over here. So you've got your little bracket and then you just do a little hook like so. And then if you do that at this side, then you try to mirror it at the other side. I should have done it with a normal pencil so I could rub out, but just to give you the idea. So that gives you that sort of nose. And one of my girls, Clarity, the one who was You Are Enough, I'm sure she has a nose like that. Let me just have a look. Yeah. So there it goes round in a little bracket and then up in a little sweep. And as you can see, her nose is not straight. She's got a little bit of a crooked nose. You know, this side was a little bit fatter than that side. But you know what? It gave her a little bit of character, and she's one of my favourite girls. And a lot of people seem to relate to her. So, you know, noses don't have to be perfect. So I think that brings us to the end. So we've done 2 noses. Whoops, sorry. This one and this one today, and hopefully by showing you the other ones you can experiment with trying different sizes. And if you want to use small buttons just to create the small one, or just draw them on, that's fine. So I'm going to look forward to seeing and hearing how you're getting on. If you are enjoying the workshops, you know, let me know. If you're not enjoying them, let me know. And you know, please do share in the group, because it's good for everybody else to see how far you're all coming. I'm really proud of you all. I think you're all doing amazing, and I'm looking forward to when we get to the point where we can complete a whole girl's face, and it'll be your own unique girl, your whimsical girl, where you started thinking, you know what, I can't draw, and then you realise, you know what, I can draw, and I can draw a whimsical girl, and hopefully that makes you feel really good. So I shall say my goodbyes, and I shall look forward to our next one, which will be all about the lips. So I look forward to that. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.